Welcome to Doctor Abroad, a 4 episodes limited series where we will find out how it's like to be a doctor in different countries of the world. And for this edition, we have guests from Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and Brazil. So we will find out how it's like to be a doctor in different systems and on different continents, if I can say that. Thank you a lot for accepting the invitation to our new series, Doctor Abroad. Hello, Mr.
Thank you.
Dr. Merhi.
Hello, Christian.
Guys, last episode of this series we found out how it's like to be a doctor in Germany, in Italy, in the Netherlands, and today we fly out of Europe. We fly to Brazil in Sao Paulo, from where our next guest is. Dr. Mahmoud Merhi from Sao Paulo. So we will find out how is a totally different medical system than the one that we knew from Europe. Also, we want to thank our partner Medicist, which helps us make all these awesome episodes. They are a medical scrub company from Romania. They have really stylish and quality medical scrubs, and last week they launched the men collection. So check out the website page on medicist.ro. Also, we started Monday, Tuesday and Thursday 3 giveaways: meet with Medicist, with Smartish, and also with Residențiat Medicina. Today we started a new giveaway. If you check out our Instagram page, together with Optic Medicis. After I made a pair of glasses with computer protection, they are life-changing. You feel much better, your eyes are much more relaxed. So in the giveaway today with Optic Medicis, we will give out a pair of frames together with computer protection from one of the best lenses in the market from Essilor. So join our giveaway, and until then, let's find out how it's like to be a doctor in Brazil. Who are you? Can you introduce you a little bit briefly? Who you are, where do you work, and what do you work?
Okay, so I'm Mahmoud Merhi. I had the privilege to have multinationality. So I'm Lebanese and Brazilian. My mom is Brazilian and my father is Lebanese.
Okay.
I grew up in Lebanon. And I pursued my education in Lebanon for most of my life. I was thinking about doing engineering back in the high school. I was a bit of programming fanatic, but there was something that changed my mind. And it was when my grandfather was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma. And then we went accompanying him to the hospital through the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy, all of this. And I've seen the doctors in the hospital with that white robe and the white jacket, and it was very amusing to see them passing to us the diagnosis, doing the analysis. So I thought, why not? It seems to be a great job. They're helping my grandfather. I want to help people too. So after that, in my last year in the high school education, I switched to the medical mentality. So I wanted to pursue the medical specialty. And in Lebanon, in the high school, we have 3 different systems in the last year. So you would go to the last year where you will have the subjects that are specific to the career that you want to pursue. For example, if you want to do engineering, mathematics, there's one subtype of the last year where they will focus on these subjects. And if you want to do the medical field, you want to pursue in the medical field, there is the life sciences subtype where you will go more into the biology, life sciences. So I changed my mind just before the last year. And then the school's director, she already put me in the mathematics, physics subtype. And then when I chose to go to the other one, she got amazed because I was always that guy that likes physics, likes mathematics. And she was amused. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "No, I changed my mind."
Exactly.
That
Everyone thought
was
you are
what
going to be an engineer.
exactly. And then I changed my mind, and she went against, and she said, "No, you have to do what you're good on." These kind of things, né? And then I pursued my life sciences. Since then,
Are you happy with your decision going
I
engineer?
wouldn't have. I would have changed my mind million times. It's. I think I did the right decision because uh, today, as I practice medicine, I see why I changed my mind back then, and it's something gratifying for me, and that's why it fills me with energy every day, helping people, attending people, and this is great. This is great. I think that engineering wouldn't have. It would have been great, but wouldn't have given me this kind of gratification. Then I went to the university. I did the Lebanese American University in Lebanon. I went to the Lebanese American University because in Lebanon, I will I will explain a bit about Lebanon. There are several education systems in Lebanon. Since it was colonized by different countries and there were several missionaries in Lebanon, there are several education systems. Primarily, there are two education systems. There is the French and there's the English. And that's why in Lebanon, the people are fluent either in French or in English or both. Nowadays, it's both most of the times. And usually we do our education following one system. I did the English system, and then at the end of the high school, I went to the university that adopts an English system, which is the Lebanese American University, which adopts the American system because there are the medical schools in Lebanon that adopt the French system. I
And
did
you choose the
the
English
Lebanese.
one.
I chose the English one. I chose the English one. It's because my whole education was based on the English education.
So in
Um,
university, you studied everything in English?
Everything in English.
Okay.
In university, I remember that we had only one subject in Arabic, and this subject was like something that the Ministry of Education has put as obligatory subject. Like at least you have to have one Arabic subject because you're in an Arabic country, which is Lebanon. But the rest of the subjects were all in English. We could not communicate with our professors in Arabic during the lectures, so we had to communicate everything in English, and this includes my high school. We usually have this kind of focus in Lebanon. That's why the people they usually graduate with fluent accent or fluent English or French because inside the lectures, people cannot communicate in Arabic.
I can
You
see
can
that your
only
English
communicate
is
in.
perfect. Your English is perfect. I can see
It
that.
was better. It was better. Since I moved to Brazil, it's going backwards because here in Brazil, like almost no one speaks English.
We will come to that part. First of all, I want to ask you how many years is the university in Lebanon?
So let's go. When you go into the French system, it's directly a 7 year system. You do the acceptance exam, the admission exam, and when you pass that admission exam, you would go doing these 7 years. You won't have exams during these 7 years so that you can graduate from one class to another or
Okay.
from one year to another. Clearly, you would have to do the exams in order to graduate as a doctor, but once you enter, you're into the medical system. The American one is different. We have the pre-med and the medical system. Now, say I don't know if you're aware of that, but the American system it's like 4 years are pre-med and 3 years are pre-med, sorry, and 4 years are medical years. So the 3 years you will be learning the basic sciences that you will use during your medical education. And these medical sciences, they are usually when you do the BS in biology. That's why I'm already graduated as a BS in biology. So, in addition to my medical degree, I am a BS in biology because I had to do the pre-med in biology, where we had to do the biochemistry, microbiology, biology. mathematics, physics, chemistry, organic chemistry, all these subjects that are the basic sciences that you will use during your medical education. At the end of these 3 years, you will get your BS, which is the diploma, and then you will do the exam. You will have to do the exam called the MCAT. It's
Okay.
the American exam. It's done in the States, where you will have to do this exam. You will get a grade. I don't know how it's done now, what's the grade now, because it was a long time ago. But you would have three subjects and you will have a grade at the end of this exam. This exam, you will use it during your admission to the medical school. And
Okay.
then you will and it enters in, it's one of the biggest factors as an entrance criteria to your medical school as an English system, okay, which is the Lebanese American University and the American University of Beirut. Usually these are the two biggest universities, the English speaking universities that use the same system. Why did they do that? They did that because people sometimes would drop off medicine,
Okay.
like in the third year, fourth year. People dropped off medicine in the fourth year. We hear a lot of these stories. So they thought, well, let's give them at least a degree so they can drop off. If they find out that they don't like medicine, they can pursue a life sciences career as a biologist, as a chemist, as a physicist. So they can drop off at the end of these 3 years and then they do masters in biology, masters in bioinformatics.
But are a lot of your former colleagues that dropped out and said, okay, 3 years, it's enough for me?
Well, I can tell you that I had close friends who dropped off, not dropped off, they finished these 3 years and they said, well, I think I'm not doing medicine.
Okay.
Well, I think I will go to Belgium. I will do a master's in biology. Many of my friends, they went to, I think there's one friend who went to Belgium. He did master's and then a doctorate, the PhD. There's another friend who went to Boston and he did the same in the States. So, and they are successful people now. They are very happy. They do the research, they do the molecular biology research, which are necessary for the medical field. So I think it was an interesting thing for the American system because they think about this possibility of someone doing the medicine and not liking it.
I think it's a really good system. We don't have this kind of system in Romania. We have only 6 years, and
Exactly.
when you finish, you can only be a doctor if you want to go further with the studies.
Exactly, exactly. And I met some Romanian and European colleagues. We went to do the IFMSA. It's a league. It's an international league where we do switch. We will go 1 month to a country and we get to know the system. I went to Bulgaria,
Oh,
and
okay.
that was during my medical school when I went to the medical school during my 4 years medical school. I think at the end of the first year I went to Bulgaria and I got to meet many friends, many colleagues from Europe that are dear friends until today. We are in touch, and I got to know how it works in Europe. So everyone told me it's 6 years, and you enter and you graduate as a medical doctor, which is different from the American system.
It is a
And I
little
got to
bit.
visit Romania.
You told me about that, and hopefully you will come again sometimes.
I really liked it.
And we can also go to a dinner and meet in person. We only met online. I
Yeah.
want the Lebanon system, about the university in Lebanon. First of all, is it hard to be admitted in the University of Medicine?
Yes. Yes. How it works? There are few universities. There is a certain number of places that is determined by the Ministry of Education. So how it works? Like every year, all Lebanon has 200 seats for medicine, and it's distributed among universities. The universities that has the medical degree as as an education system. Primarily, it's the public Lebanese university, the Lebanese university, which is the public university in Lebanon, where it is considered one of the hardest and the most difficult because You don't pay. It's a
Okay.
public sector. You don't pay to graduate as a medical student, and many people would be doing the admission exam. Many people would be doing the admission exam. Like it's a very difficult selection system because like I don't have the numbers in my head, but many people get rejected at the end of this selection, and only some people, like 100 people, would go as the new medical students. Regarding the private universities, my university was a private university. There is also a very high competition because they are very expensive, and the people would be competing in order to get the merit scholarship. So there is also the competition, especially for the scholarships. I got the chance to have a scholarship during my education. This helped me. If it wasn't for my scholarship, I wouldn't have done medicine. I wouldn't have been graduated up as a medical doctor because it costs about that, like 10 years ago, it was costing $30,000 a year in the private system, and that's a big sum of money.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So, and there is also the selection. There are some people, there is the competition, there is the grade from that exam, the MCAT, and there is like 40 places. LAU, which is my university, will have 40 places, and there will be like 500 people competing for these 40 places, or 1,000 people for these 40 places. And you are not competing only with your colleagues from LAU, you are competing from colleagues from LAU, from other universities, people from the Lebanese university who wanted to switch to the private system. So there's always that high competition.
Okay. You told me in Lebanon there are 7 years. What happens when you finish the seventh year of university?
The understanding of how the biochemical systems inside our body, the gland system, for example, endocrinology. So I was really interested in that field, and I always thought that I will be doing a clinical kind of career. And I always thought that surgery is something that I wouldn't be doing. It was always something like very distant to me. Why? Because I went to the anatomy labs, and in the anatomy lab, that was the horrendous smell. Uh, I didn't like doing the dissection in the anatomy lab, to be honest. I didn't like because for me it was different. We had to do the dissection in in a situation that where someone's dead in front of you. So it was somehow distant for me to do something related to surgical fields. When I went to the medical during the rotations in the hospital, because we do the 2 years, which is the theoretical part, and we do some visits to the hospital, like a bit of exposure. But in the third and the fourth year, it's like 100% hospital exposure. It's
Okay.
100%. You would go and do the rotations. You will be doing 3 months in the clinical medicine, in internal medicine, 3 months in surgery, 3 months in orthopedics. So you would be always rotating in a real clinical situation where you will have the direct exposure with the residents. You will see how they're working with the doctors, the attendings, and with the people, the patients. And when I went to do these years, I I saw that medicine, that like the clinical internal medicine, is great on paper as a theory, but I didn't like how it works on people. I didn't like the way I didn't. It wasn't gratifying for me because someone would be in a critical situation. You have to work on the kidney. The kidney works, but the heart stops, and then you have to do the heart, and then the liver stops, and it wasn't gratifying for me. Like it was almost like a race against death, especially in the critical care. When I went through surgery, which I had like expectations in like ground below zero expectations for surgery. I really liked it because for me, we went into a surgery with a problem. We got out of the surgery without that problem. It's done. And that's the gratifying part of it for me as a doctor.
This was the part that set up your mind and said, I want to be a surgeon.
Yes, yes. Because, for example, I went with a patient that had well, let's speak about the simple stuff like a hernia, an inguinal hernia. That's really um, not allowing him to do the daily stuff, working out, coughing. So the hernia was that's something that didn't allow him to have the normal daily life. And then we went into the surgery. We solved the hernia. One day after the surgery, the person is walking and he's good, and there's no hernia in place. So for me, it was gratifying. It was immediate. Clearly, we had situations where you couldn't do much. Clearly, we had the oncologic patients where you had to do a palliative care. But most of its part, the surgical part, was really gratifying for me because it solved situations in a very immediate manner. And that's when I said, oh, I think I will be doing surgery.
And I want to ask you, what happens after the 7 years? Here in Romania, we have the residency exam, and depends on the grade that you have, you can choose what medical specialty you want to learn during the residency. How is this in Lebanon?
Yes. What happened after these 7 years, that we have to do the end of the 7 years exam. So we had to do exam like to put aboard the basic sciences until the medical sciences. It was an exam that a cumulative exam, right? And we graduate as medical doctors. And then comes the reality that you have to choose where you want to specialize, which specialty. And when it comes to specialty, things are more competitive, and things can be more decisive because the number of seats for specialties are even less than the number of seats for medical education. So medical education can have 40 students, but the specialty can have like 10. Okay, and then for these 10 residency seats, you would be competing with someone who did the medical education in another university. So the competition becomes it becomes that competition among the people who graduated from that university, from the people who graduated from other universities, or the people who are changing specialty.
And this competition is through an exam?
Usually, it's the end of year exam for every university and the curriculum, and then they will be doing the interviews.
Okay.
So you get the place after an interview?
Yes, yes, you have to do an interview. And then they will be reviewing your grades during your whole medical education, the end of year grades, and your interpersonal skills, the soft skills, the people skills, which is the interview. And based on that,
So are the soft skills important?
they are important. They are important because sometimes they would be perceiving that someone will not be cooperative in a certain residency, and then they will, even if they have great grades, high grades, he wouldn't be accepted for such reasons. If he demonstrates that in the interview, right? Some people they don't demonstrate much stuff in the interview. I think that the interview part is something that should be improved from the interviewee part, right? To do that critical questions that can detect the soft skills, where you can say this guy will not do well in this residency, and it's something I think, in my opinion, that's international, not only in Lebanon. So how did I choose surgery? Why did I come to Brazil? During my last year, I did a rotation in plastic surgery in Brazil. So we had the international rotation. In the international rotation, we could do like 3 or 4 months. I don't remember well. I think it's 4 months of an elective in any place that we want outside of our hospital, the university hospital. And I had the Brazilian nationality. I entered in contact with some doctors in Brazil, and I had the chance to take part to do 3 or 4 months elective in plastic surgery here in São Paulo. So I accompanied the team of Dr. Nahas. He's a famous plastic surgeon, one of the pioneers of abdominoplasty here in São Paulo. And I got to accompany the team, the residents, and take part in the surgeries, do the sutures. It was great. And when I did that, I saw that the residents had very great technical skills, and I was a really good observer throughout my medical education, and I thought, wow, these guys, they are really good. They have really great technical skills. I've seen people with technical skills, but not like this when I was in Lebanon. So I started comparing stuff. And I began asking them, how's the medical education over here? How does it work? Uh, how did you reach plastic surgery here? You have to do the residency exam, and then you do the general surgery, and then you will do the plastic surgery and stuff. So I get really amazed, and I thought, well, I think I'm doing my residency in Brazil. Why? Because they have much higher exposure, much higher number of cases. The population is different. The population is much greater here in Brazil. We're talking about 250 millions compared to 4 millions in Lebanon. There are many cases. There are much more surgeries. Like what you do here in 1 month, you would need like 8 months, 6, 8 months in Lebanon to do. So I started thinking about doing things in Brazil, but there was the obstacle of how I would be changing a medical system to another.
I have two questions here. When you went to Brazil, did you know Portuguese?
Yes, yes. I've always spoken Portuguese because of my mom. My mom is Brazilian. Her family is Brazilian, and we always communicated with Portuguese. Clearly, I spoke Portuguese, but I had like I didn't know the slang words.
Okay.
So when I came to Brazil, I got to catch these slang expressions that the local people use. That didn't make sense to me at the first.
But do you think if you didn't know Portuguese, would it be a barrier to be a doctor in Brazil?
Great question, Christian. I think this is a great question. Yes, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I would be very clinical in saying that in order to do the residency in Brazil, you would have to be you would really need to know like intermediate to advanced Portuguese, because people here, they don't speak English. Much of the people, they don't speak English. English is something very secondary here in Brazil. Like the people who would be speaking English fluently or understanding or communicating, I would shoot like 5% of the population. Unfortunately, the education system in Brazil is different. Unfortunately, much of the people, they are of middle to low socioeconomic class, so they don't have that exposure to English, and it's not really taught in the schools. This prevents the fluency in the future. And we can see that much of the people who want to learn English here in Brazil, they have to do additional courses. And it was something that always amazed me, that I've told this to my wife. I said, wow, I'm amazed because in Lebanon, it was an obligation. It was something obligatory that we graduate fluent in that secondary language. And here you have to pay. to become a bit like a beginner in English. You have to pay for courses to do that.
I have a question here. I heard the Brazilian plastic surgeons are recognized in the world for how good they are. How do they communicate with a patient that come from different countries for a surgery?
The doctors, most of the doctors, especially the academic doctors in big hospitals, they know English. They can communicate in English. The problem is not in the attending. The problem is not in the colleague residents, which can usually the doctors here, they are considered high class people because they earn well compared to the population. So they usually have more access. And the academic doctors, they do conferences. So it's a way of an obligation for them to know English. So it's not a problem with the attending. They can communicate well with the attending. However, it's the problem is in the communication with the patient. How can you communicate with the patient? How can you ask the patient about the problems? How can you do the electronic record? How can you write things? These are the obstacles for an international student. It's possible, for example, that you come to Brazil and you do the fellowship, like kind of a fellowship, that you would be accompanying an attending who is really good in English. He would be passing to you the technical skills. You would be entering the surgeries and you will be supervised, and you will do your fellowship inside the operating room. You will catch some phrases in Portuguese. You would be communicating a bit, but it's not obligatory for you to do that because you're coming here only for a fellowship, and you would be returning to your home country with a very good technical skill because everything that you had to do, they had to be inside the operating room. The problem is doing a residency where you have to communicate with the patient, where you have to do a duty, a night duty where a patient will come and you will have to communicate. There is no attending to always translate for you.
Now I understand.
The second question that I have, you told us you went for an exchange for of 3-4 months in Brazil, where you practice plastic surgery. At the moment, you are a specialist doctor in general surgery. Why did you choose general surgery over plastic surgery in the end?
Well, uh, so how I will be explaining a bit of how I had this transition from Lebanon to Brazil because it takes part in explaining why I got into this field. To be transitioning from any country, not only Lebanon, from any country and entering into the Brazilian system, you have two choices. Or you have to do like a fellowship where you will not be doing a formal residency. You will be entering a complex hospital where you will receive a great education. You will be accompanying the attending in a certain specialty, for example, plastic surgery, which is one of the most common fellowships here. You will not have an active CRM, CRM, we call it here in Brazil, which is your registry as a doctor. So you would not be practicing as a medical doctor outside of this complex hospital. You will be only in that department in that hospital where you will be doing your fellowship. You finish your fellowship, you can continue your education, you can do the instructor part, but you have to come back to your country to practice as a doctor. The other way is entering as a resident in Brazil. And this way you have to be a doctor. You have to have a registry as a doctor. You would have the stamp as a doctor. You have to be registered inside the commission of doctors in Brazil, where you have specific number. I think in Romania would be the same thing. You would have a number in your stamp, and this identifies you as an active doctor. This way, this kind of transition is more complicated and much more difficult to do. And it's the way that I chose to do because I didn't have the means to do a fellowship without gaining money. Okay, so to do a fellowship, you will come to the fellowship, you have to pay for that fellowship, right? And you will not be earning. You're not a practicing doctor, so you will have to stay 3 years spending from your own money.
Okay.
Unfortunately. So if you have the means, that's great. If you don't have the means, you have to look for another way. The other way is doing what Brazilians are doing. Like you have to enter the system. And to enter the system, you have to do something called the Revalida exam. Revalida is to revalidate your degree. And then you have to do one more exam to revalidate your medical degree, to show, to validate that you have the basic knowledge, you can treat patients, can do everything right, and you're not a danger in Brazil as a practicing doctor to the population. To do that, you have to study everything that I studied English. I have to do it in Portuguese. So exactly. So
My
that's
God.
the special part. So what I did was I said, okay, I was very frank with my university where I graduated in Lebanon, and I said, oh, look, I'm going to Brazil. But during this time, I don't want to sit in my home studying for these exams. I want to practice medicine. I want to enter into the preliminary surgical field. I didn't take a seat, which is the categorical surgery. There is the categorical and the preliminary. Categorical is the person who wants really to pursue the at the end till the end of the residency. The preliminary is someone who is competing for a categorical seat in the other year, or someone who is doing something as a transition, as a temporary thing until he pursues another seat in another university or abroad. And I was frank with the university. I told them, "Oh, look, I don't think that I'm doing this until the end of my residency. I wouldn't be completing my residency, but I need the preliminary seat to practice." They were okay, and we had. I was accepted as a general surgery resident in Lebanon, where I practiced for 2 years. I practiced for 2 years. During that time, I was studying for the Brazilian exams and studying for the residency exams. And I did the Brazilian exams. There are two, the Revalida. There is the theoretical part and there is the practical part. The theoretical part, we had to do it. I passed. It was very hard. I call it it's an exam to eliminate people, not to approve people. And we passed this part, and then they had a practical exam where we had to do like an OSCE. I don't know if you know what's the OSCE, but it's that practical exam where you have an actor in front of you who is simulating a clinical case, and you have to ask him and pass the conduct and tell him what he's passing and do everything according to a checklist. So the technical part, you will be entering into the room, like someone would be timing things and will tell you, okay, now you have 10 minutes to get into that room and do what you have to do as a doctor. And you will not have any idea about what you will face in that room. You can face someone who is, it can be an actor like someone, like a human who is acting the situation. It can be a mannequin, can be a wound that you have to suture, or you have to do some kind of procedure. It can be many stuff. It can be anything.
Okay.
It can be a mother who is with her child that she's getting hysterical about the situation and you have to calm her down. So it can be a very surprising situation. And you have to do that part, that you have to do something based on a checklist, like, did you call the person by his name? Did you mention this? Did you did this? Did you do this maneuver? And then you'll get a grade at the end of this exam for every station. It was a 2 days exam that I had to do in another state, not in São Paulo, and it was very difficult because the first day I was amazed. I got surprised by the stations, and the surprising element got me, and I didn't do well. Like there was a station that I didn't do well at all. Like I just blacked out. Right, like you enter and you realize that things are. It was the first station. The first station was the worst one for me because it depends. You can start by a good station or a bad station. For my luck, I started with a very bad station, and then I left this me affecting in an emotional way that I did bad in all the four stations, the following four stations. So I did 5 stations in one day. I had another other 5 stations in the other day. At the end of the first day, I thought, wow, I did really bad. It's now or never, because everything that I worked for will evaporate tomorrow if I don't do well. And I cannot let what happened today me affect tomorrow. And this is something that happens a lot with medical students in exams, because we get very stressed about things. We study a lot. I think that the emotional part is much more important than the theoretical part, because the theory much of the people know, but under the stressful situation, a person can get lost. And the other day, I thought, well, I had a different mentality. I thought, well, I will do my best and I will forget about everything. And things flew. It was flowing well. Thank God. I think 9,000 people, they did the Revalida exam. At the end of the process, like, it was only 250 people who actually made it, which shows how much it is difficult. And that's what I call it. It's an eliminating exam, in my opinion, because it's an exam that is made for you not to pass. And it's very difficult for a reason, because here in Brazil, they want only the best from outside the world to practice medicine inside Brazil. So this was a good elimination procedure.
The
Then
competition
I
is very
thought,
tough.
very tough. And then I thought, well, I did the Revalida exam. I got my registry as a doctor. The residency should be based on the same criteria as the Lebanese residency, which is taking my grades, doing the interview, and entering into residency. And when I came to Brazil, I didn't have a mentor, especially in the system that I went through. So I moved at the end of the 2 years in Lebanon. I said goodbye. It was in 2019, I guess, 2020, one year before the pandemic. I said goodbye to everyone. I said goodbye to my family in Lebanon and said, well, I'm moving to Brazil. I came to Brazil. I started practicing medicine until the residency starts. I came to Brazil in September 2019, I guess. I don't remember well. And then the residency would start in March the next year. And until then, you have to do the exams. But I was not aware of anything. Well, the residency exams, they have already started by the time that I got here.
Okay.
So, and I wasn't aware. There was no mentor who would tell me, oh, look, do these places are good for you, these places are bad for you. I didn't have any idea about the culture in residency here in Brazil, nothing. And I thought that I had to take my CV grades and I will enter in the residency. Depois, I started Portuguese. After reviewing stuff over the internet, asking some people, how does it work? I got in contact with these residents that I had a rotation with them, the plastic surgeons, and then they told me, well, these places are good, but well, you have to do an exam. Oh, I have to do an exam, and another exam. And that was shocking to me because I didn't prepare for the exams. I was doing my Revalida exams. I wasn't preparing for the residency exams. But for my luck, the Revalida exam was too hard that you have to study much too hard for it, and it awards different subjects that it would have worked for my residency exam. Clearly, without a focus, because here you have to know which institution you are entering, and each institution has a certain focus in their exam. I think you're aware of that. I think it's like this in other places in the world. Like this university, they like to focus on pediatrics. This university likes to focus on this subject. In Revalida, it didn't exist. It was a very broad exam, but I studied for everything, and I said, well, let's go. I started applying for residencies, and I applied to different places, but I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared at all. By the time that I got here, the residency application was already going on. There were places that already had passed the deadline. There were all other places that I had only 10 days to apply. It was chaotic. And one of the places that I applied to was the SUS, which
Okay.
is the Sistema Único da Saúde, Sistema Único de Saúde, which is the public sector of health in Brazil. It's the sector that will be presting care for everyone, even if you don't have an insurance, even if you don't have a house, even if you live in the streets, you will be treated in this system. It's the system which has the highest volume.
Okay.
And when you apply to this exam, you have to apply. I was thinking about just getting this again. I did 2 years of general surgery in Lebanon, and the 2 years of general surgery in Lebanon, they didn't count in Brazil. So
Okay.
you have to start all over again. And to get into plastic surgery, you have to pass through general surgery. So in order to do plastic surgery in Brazil, you have to be a general surgeon at first. Okay? And I
Okay.
was thinking about doing it this way, that I will do general surgery, then I will be doing plastic surgery, and that's how my career is.
Do you want to be a plastic surgeon?
I changed my mind. I changed my mind.
Okay.
I changed my mind. Throughout this process, I changed my mind. But I did the SUS exam, I passed. And then in this SUS exam, it's many hospitals. They are all the public hospitals, the general public hospitals in São Paulo. And then when you pass it, you have to choose in which hospital you want. But you will have a list because other people will choose. And it depends on your rank in this exam that you can get or not this seat in that hospital. However, the hospital that I wanted was the hospital where one of these residents, like 3 years ago, told me that he did his general surgery in the rotation of plastic surgery. He was the one with most technical skills that I really liked, and he told me, "Well, in my residency, I operated a lot. I had a great education." And I said, "Okay, so I will go to this place." I didn't have any mentor. I just chose it based on his review, on one person review.
Okay.
And then I chose this place. This place was available. I got into this place. It is the Hospital Geral de Carapicuíba, which is the General Hospital of Carapicuíba, a district, a municipality here in São Paulo.
Okay.
And I did the 2 years of general surgery. Well, these 2 years of general surgery were adventurous. They were really great. I really liked it. It's when I got passionate about the general surgery, where we had much higher volume than I ever had in Lebanon, where I operated much cases, difficult cases. It was full of adrenaline. Here in Lebanon, we were not. Used to gunshot wounds. We weren't used to this kind of violence. And in Brazil, the violence is high, and especially in Carapicuíba. So we got much people who had received a knife in the abdomen, gunshot wound, these kind of stuff, which you have to run with the patient to get them alive. You have to operate in much a short time or a short period of time, and pray so that everything goes well. And this kind of adrenaline got me interested into the general surgery. That's
I have
why
to ask
the
you.
choice.
I want to ask you, these cases come at night or during the day?
Most of the cases, I would say, like 80% of the cases, they came at night, but we received many cases during the day.
During residency, how many nights you had to sleep in the hospital during a month?
Well,
Or not to sleep, to
Uh,
work at night in the hospital.
Sleep, sleep is considered a very strong word for the
Yeah,
duties here.
I wanted to
Depends.
correct it, to work during the night.
Well, the duties here in I remember that my duties in Lebanon were one every 4 days, like something like that, every 4 5 days, a night every 4 to 5 days. It depends on how many residents are rotating in the same month at the same hospital, because we had several hospitals to cover. In Brazil, I think that on an average, I had 2 to 3 nights. I had 2 nights to 3 nights per week,
Wow.
because especially during my first year. During my second year, it became better, like 1 to 2 nights per week, maximum of 1 to 2 nights per week. But during my first year, it was like 2 to 3 nights per week, because during our residency, one person dropped off. So we had one person dropped off after the deadline to put another person in place. After this deadline passed, we couldn't put another person, like selection already passed off, and we had to cover his duties. So that's why we had 2 to 3 times per week. Depends, like some weeks we had 2 times, other weeks we had 3 times. When there are residents in other hospitals, rotating in other hospitals, like in other services, we had a heavier kind of duty, a heavier kind of month, but it was more or less like that. And I think in general in Brazil, it's more or less like that. They are trying to change this, uh, but in general, it's like this for general surgery.
And how many years you have the residency in general surgery in Brazil?
Well, the residency of general surgery in Brazil was 2 years, but then in recently it changed to 3 years. So currently, the new residents, they have to do 3 years of general surgery. However, surgery in Brazil, the general surgery in the word, usually it is the general and digestive surgery, where you will do like 5 years of residency, like you do everything. In Brazil, it's a bit divided, because you have to do the general surgery, and then after doing the general surgery, you can get to other surgical fields. You choose another surgical specialty where you want to specialize. You do vascular surgery, you do plastic surgery, or you can do advanced general surgery. So you get into more advanced stuff, or you do, for example, coprology, okay,
Okay.
which is the coprological coloproctology, which is the coloproctological surgery related to colon, anal area, or you can do the digestive surgery, which is related to the esophagus, stomach, pancreas, the liver, or you do vascular surgery, which not related to the general surgery. So if you want to count like the number of years needed to do the full general surgery, it would be 5 years. It would be
Okay.
5 years, uh, counting the advanced general surgery, or the digestive surgery, which is like the other places in the world. But here they do this kind of stuff, so that you can choose another surgical specialty. And because they think that in order for you to be a successful plastic, vascular, or whatever kind of surgeon, you have to be a good general surgeon. And you will see that many vascular surgeons, many plastic surgeons, they continue doing duties as general surgeons. They continue operating abdomen. They are really good in operating abdomen, which is different than other places in the world, in my opinion. Because in other places in the world, someone would be entering the plastic surgery, but they cannot operate a general surgery case. Here, no. Here, like the plastic surgeon, if something bad happens, he can help himself.
Tell us, how is the medical system in Brazil? In Europe, for example, we have it split into public and private sector. Is it like this also in Brazil?
Yes, yes. Here in Brazil, there is the public sector, where you will receive a free care, regardless of your income, regardless of where you live, regardless of your nationality as well. You're in the Brazilian territory, you're a Romanian, you came to the Brazilian territory on the first day, for your bad luck, you had an appendicitis, you will get operated without paying a penny. This is one of the advantages. I think it's a system that really works, which is the public system. However, since it is a public system and there are a lot of people who depend on it, it becomes slow in terms of elective surgeries and in terms of certain diseases. So in every neighborhood, there are many, like there is the emergency, there is the emergency sector, there is along with the emergency sector, there is the attending sectors, which are the polyclinics from different specialties, which will attend the population as part of the public sector. However, whenever you get to register in the public sector and until gets your turn, it can take a lot of time. We are talking about a population of 250 million. We are talking about many people with diseases, with problems. And the problem, we call it the fila, the queue, so that you get your turn. Sometimes you have to pass by the gastroenterologist, but you will get your consult after 6 months, 7 months. So this kind of wait introduced the importance of the private sector to solve these more emergent situations. So
Then
the
in the
private sector,
can you also go with an insurance, or you have to pay for the intervention?
well, there are people who are without insurance, but they pay for the private sector. And there are people who got the insurance, which can be attended in the private sector as part of their insurance. Or if they choose to pass with a doctor that is not attending that specific insurance, they can pay for the consult and the insurance will refund them with the consult, depending on the category of their insurance. Sometimes, let's take an example. For example, I don't work with any specific insurance. I work as a private sector doctor, and I attend patients from different socioeconomic classes. I've attended patients who don't have insurance, but they pay the consult because they need to solve their problem in a more urgent manner. They need to have a better attention, which they don't receive well in the public sector, because the public sector, like if I want to attend in the public sector, I will arrive in the morning. I will have a list of 40 people to attend like in 4 hours. Okay, that's how it works. Unfortunately, it's good on paper, but the practicality of it is somehow difficult. So when I attend a patient during 1 hour, it's different. I can ask them different questions. I can get to know their lifestyle. I can get to know what other factors are involved in the disease process. So sometimes someone who doesn't have insurance, they get the money and they pass with a private doctor. Sometimes someone who has the insurance, but they don't want to pass with that specific doctor of the insurance, because in the insurance as well, who attends with the insurance, we know that the insurance will not refund much for a consult. So the doctor will be attending much more people in a shorter lapse of time. So as well, sometimes someone who has an insurance opts for passing with another doctor, and then he asks the insurance for the refund. That depends on their category. Let's take an example. If the consult costs 500 real, which is the Brazilian currency, and the person has a good category in their insurance, they can refund 500. But in other categories, they can refund nothing, or they can refund 200, 300, 400, depending on your category. Sometimes this is the advantages for the person to get a different kind of care.
Okay. Thank you that you describe us the difference a little bit about the private and public sector. Here I wanted to ask you also, as a residency student, doctor in Brazil, the residency is only in the public, you had to do it in the public hospitals, or you can also do it in the private hospitals?
You can do it in both. You can do it in both. There are the residencies in the public, both in the public and in the private hospitals. There are the advantages and disadvantages of each. Okay. We know that the hands-on is different when it comes to a private hospital. We know that the hands-on in the public hospitals is much higher. Uh,
Okay.
Okay, so when you're dealing with private hospitals, the higher the socioeconomic class, the more difficult you will get your hands on. But you will get exposed to much more technology. Okay, so advantage, disadvantage, and then you have to balance things and see what you want. In my opinion, the best doctors, the best surgeons, they usually graduate from the public hospitals because of this kind of hands, especially in the surgical field. I don't know about the medical field because the medical field there is not much hands-on.
Okay.
But for the surgical field, I think that the hands-on is very important, especially if you have good mentors, you have good chiefs. My chiefs were excellent. They were always there to help us. They were always there to orient us. Um they taught us all the techniques possible. They had a lot of patience with us to to teach us to be good residents, good doctors, and good surgeons in the future. They were critical. They were nice, but at the same time critical, so that you can be a good surgeon in the future. I think there is a dynamic where for example, it's good to do a public kind of residency at the beginning of your careers to get a good hands-on. And then in the subspecialty, it would be interesting doing something more private to get exposure to the technology. I think it's easier swifting from less technology to more technology than from higher technology to a system where you don't have technology. You have to do what can be done. Yeah, this is the kind of situation in the public hospitals. You have to do what you have. You have to put a vacuum for a wound. You have to invent a vacuum, my friend. You have to invent a vacuum with what you have from material. You don't have that vacuum that costs 5,000 hiao and put it and the battery doesn't exist. You have to invent.
And after you finish the residency, what opportunities do you get in Brazil as a doctor?
Okay, this is interesting. Because throughout your residency, as a general clinician, you get to work, you get to do the duties. Okay, so during your residency, you can work, and this is something interesting, I think, for people to know. If you got the chance to do a residency in Brazil and you have a fluent Portuguese language, you can work and you can gain money as a resident. Okay, you
Okay.
will get money as a resident at the end of your at the end of the month. You have a basic salary, like that salary that wouldn't be enough for you to live. But you can do these extra duties and you can gain money, and it's a considerable amount of money for a resident. So you can gain well, you can live well. Clearly, in the beginning of your residency, you will have that difficulty of doing duties in the residency. Duties outside the residency, you would be spending like much of your week working, especially that during the day you cannot work because you're in the hospital and sometimes you're leaving the hospital like 9 p.m., like 10 p.m. It was very difficult, especially in the surgical field. But you got to you have the opportunity to work in the weekend, and if you don't have a duty on in your residency, and on Sunday you can work the 24 hours of Sunday, and you will be gaining money. But they are duties. Or you can do the attending kind of job as a general clinician in the polyclinics, wherever you want to work and gain for a consult, doing consults.
Okay.
Whenever you graduate as a specialist, the opportunities depend much on you. Uh, the opportunities depend much on what are you ready to do regarding your future, your career. I think the first thing to do is when you graduate, it's taking a break, not taking a break from work, but taking a break, like a day, to determine what are your objectives. And this, I think, in my opinion, works for any system in the world. What are my objectives? Where I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? What's the